Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everyone. Addiction, big problem in our society and becoming more and more challenging, especially since COVID, especially with many other substances showing up out there. And we're going to talk about that, the road to recovery, what causes addictions in general, and so much more. And all within her wheelhouse, helping people as an amazing psychologist. And she joins us. She's also an author. Dr. Ann Creekmore is here today. How are you doing today?
Great, Steve. How are you?
Very well, very well. This is a topic that needs to be discussed because more and more I'm hearing of people becoming addicted, gravitating toward something. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a bottle or, some kind of substance.
Right.
There's many different addictions out there. Let's boil it down to the basics. What's going on with somebody when they find themselves gravitating to something that is, I guess, controlling their life?
Correct. Well, that they are trying to fill some void or numb pain usually, and or fit in, with a group that does that, be kind of influenced to belong. And then if they have the predispositions, like, they believe that there's a genetic predisposition, like it can run in families, addiction. And if they have that, it would make it harder for them not to progress, with it versus just go through a phase of it.
When we talk about the genetic aspect, what's your feeling on how prevalent that is among people who are addicted? For example, and again, this is just hypothetical, but do you think it accounts for 50%, 30% genetics playing a role in addiction?
That's a good question. If I were to give you the answer, I might not be correct, but I do know we probably could Google or Alexa it, and we could probably know. I mean, I know a lot of, disorders might be 30%, like bipolar actually is kind of an addictive lifestyle, which I could explain if you have an interest in that or for another show. But because they're kind of addicted to their own euphoric cocktail, they're people that are depressed. Like you could have a unipolar depression, but if a bipolar depression, the person has an addiction to, their own manic little episodes. So, pulling themselves out of depression, spotting something shiny, putting their running shoes on and chasing it. And, then they get this euphoric cocktail. They can generate their own. They don't have to get a drink from the bar or take a drug. They can generate their own serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline, feel better, pull themselves out of depression. They just learn to do it early on. And so it becomes kind of a lifestyle of trying to get yourself out of depression by chasing, by putting yourself in this little episode. So in a sense, even that is like an addictive lifestyle until they realize it, which is often the problem of any kind of addiction. People don't really realize that they have a problem. That's the, that's the key. The real beginning is to kind of have some awareness that something's going on. And that's getting a diagnosis and then starting to work on it, accepting it.
Is there such a thing as an addictive personality?
Supposedly, yes. There's, tendencies for addiction. That's kind of what I was saying, that maybe the 30% that have, the addictive gene, from family genetics, they would, then that would be, that addictive tendency.
Yeah, because I've encountered people before that I had a closer relationship with, and it just seemed that way, that they would bounce from one thing to another thing in terms of an addiction. It wasn't just like, say, a bottle. It was just anything that they could find that would numb them or take them out of reality at that moment.
Exactly. It's kind of escapist tendencies, just trying to get themselves to a level of feeling no pain and doing whatever will do that to kind of numb them out.
Is that really the baseline for addiction, taking you out of your reality, so to speak?
I mean, like I said, I think there's partly, that wanting to belong, like when you're a teenager and being negatively influenced, if you're that type of passively influenced person. But for the most part, I think that, you're right, that I agree with you that is probably the main thing that people are trying to get chill or, feel, no pain emotionally or physically or whatever. And then they reach for something quick fix to do that.
When you've worked with people on the addiction level, does it go back to, now we often talk about a lot of things go back to our childhood, and there's a lot of things we do now as adults came from our childhood subconsciously.
Right.
Is there a possibility that addiction could be the same? It's connected to childhood in a way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, some people have our children of alcoholics, and they observe their parents or their family members doing it, and it's normal. It's a reference group. People, we all drink. I have clients that I know that started drinking at age 7 in the family setting, that it was just kind of accepted and they were even allowed to do it, kind of enabled. If you're with people that enable you in your family, then that would certainly be a piece of it. Or if you're sneaking out and know someone else at 11 was not out in the house much, go out and play, with your friends. But the friends, they were just getting bottles of vodka out of their parents' home and drinking. And that particular alcoholism began there, where they were kind of neglected and able to just go and, do that without the parents really, getting involved to stop it at that point.
Yeah. And, some cultures are okay with alcohol within meals and things like that. And do you think it could possibly even start there with, let Jimmy have a little taste of that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
What about recovery? Now, you always hear about, the 12-step program and things like that. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, in chapter 8 in my book, The Whole Fulfilled Person, and we've talked about that, where you kind of attend to yourself and reparent your own self to take care of your mind, body, spirit, or it's a wheel where you're talking about, your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, will, social kind of needs, like caring for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That is the model for weaning from an addiction, whatever the addiction may be, or dependency, if you will. That is the way to start to realize, well, I do have a problem, but I want to tend to myself and really care for myself and take care of myself, mind, body, spirit. So I've got to pull away from doing whatever I'm mentally preoccupied with, because their dependencies or addictions are many kinds. I mean, you can actually, you can be a workaholic addiction, or you can be a codependent, where you're over functioning to the point that you're ill, and not taking care of yourself because you're compensating for somebody who has an addiction, or just over functioning in general, and caretaking. So not just alcoholism or drugs, or, but it could be pornography, any kind of thing. And the idea is to recognize, because you hit some sort of rock bottom, usually like your spouse is about to leave you because of it, or you're losing your job because of it, or with alcohol, you're getting a DUI because of it, driving under the influence. And so then you start to get that feedback from your environment that you've got a problem. And so you become aware of it. And then the idea is to wean from it into being our authentic self. Start to understand yourself and what will make you really happy, not escape, from just the problems of life or living, and start to take time to make yourself happy and take care of yourself.
It's often been said that people fall off the wagon after a period of time, after they go through a certain program. How does somebody stay? I don't want to use the word stay sober, because, somebody could be addicted to gambling. But
correct.
How does somebody stay on that path?
Well, it does generally help, if you've actually, first of all, accepted that you have the problem, because it's easy for people to denial, DENIAL, don't even know I'm lying, or minimize, a person, say, who had alcohol, as an alcoholic, drinking all day from the time they get up, can say, well, how can I be an alcoholic? It's just beer. It's alcohol. You're drinking it all day and you get DTs. If you don't drink, you're going delirium tremors because you're physically so addicted at this point. But the mind can play all these tricks. So the first step, of course, is awareness, and really at taking it on and saying, I realize I have this problem of some form of addiction. And then, not just kind of go along with, your spouse who will leave you, or the court system, because if they said, you got to go through ASAP or a program or whatever. So it's your acceptance, and then your awareness, and then your true acceptance of it. And then you start to make the effort to be, first of all, the phases of recovery are, the first phase is physical recovery. And of course, that could be from, codependency, or it could be from alcoholism. I mean, you can be physically not doing these things that are your particular drug of choice, your addiction, in other words. And then the second phase is actually social recovery. Like, basically, it's very hard to maintain an addiction without an enabler. You know what I mean? Like enabling people around you for whatever their reasons are, codependency or whatever. It's not, if it isn't really accepted. Like we look at the examples, of the the boy who would go out with his friends at 11 and be drinking vodka and out of the house. That's a family that I know they were enablers. So they just kind of look the other way and let this progress. So you don't want to be with people that are going to feed into your addiction. You've got to surround yourself with people that are going to say, wait a minute, that's not good for you. What else can we do? Let me give you support. And that's, of course, one of the ways is to go to the 12-step groups. The 12-step groups are about that. Now, first of all, let's try to get physically sober from whatever the addiction is, the drug of choice, whether it's pornography, a sexual addicts group, love and sex addicts groups, or codependencies, that's not due for your addictive spouse, and focus on your care, your needs. So you go to the social recovery. The reason the groups help is because you are at least in some network that is not feeding into your problem, and there's some support. And likewise, you kind of have to cut off, unfortunately, with, if you goes to go into a bar, for example, after work, and you want to stop drinking, obviously, you're not going to make that your social group. You can't continue. So, even if you stop drinking, eventually you're probably going to have something. And once you start having one, it's not long before you've gotten two, and then it's not long before you're kind of back on wherever you were. Just kind of like you smoke cigarettes and you just have one, and then you're smoking a pack. It doesn't take long to get back. So you don't want to expose yourself to, and that's what people say who have addictions. A lot of times the hardest piece is not just stopping sometimes, unless you're at the total tail end of the disease process, as they call it. That, the harder part is kind of, cutting off with people that are feeding in, your friends, that this is your life. You're used to drinking, with your buddies and after all these times. And then, then you can't really be with them and do that while you're trying to be in recovery, or even maybe after. You need to develop healthy networks. And then you have to work on why, in your inner moral. The third phase is working on your moral, psychological, spiritual recovery, which is what the 12 steps are. They take is each step to help you work on your inner self. Well, how did you get there? What is going on inside that can change, that you will not, need to do the drugs. So they are good, to do the 12 steps in some way. And maybe have a sponsor you can call if you need, and be working an inner program as well as just stopping in order to stay sober.
I understand the concept of the enabler. Great example.
Mm-hmm.
Guy goes out with his buddies, and his buddies are having a couple of beers, and then then he does, and he continues. How often is an enabler involved in an addiction? Is it almost always? Does it always have to be?
In my opinion, yes, there's usually enablers. Whether they're the people, all who are, drinking the family and they're handing their little 7-year-old drinks, that's just enabling right there and influencing. And, but generally that's something else that people can be aware of, is that who in my environment in some way, is playing into my need to drink, even if it's just toxic relationship you're in and your tendency is to drink, to cope with it. Well, then, and unfortunately what happens a lot when people have addictions is they don't really deal with their problems in living. Like if they're in a bad relationship, just drinking it away every night, having, some drinks, for example, picking on that, to fall asleep is a way that they stay in this relationship that is not satisfying. It's toxic to them. And so it's a loop, kind of vicious cycle that they're unhappy. So they drink, but because they drink, they numb it out. So they never feel that energy, motivation to get out of something toxic. They just put up with it.
Wow. So it's making them stay away from the inevitable, like a bad relationship. I don't want to confront it. I don't want to deal with it. Back to the bottle. Here we go. On my way home again. I don't want to deal with them. That person I married. Back to the bottle.
Right.
Is wow.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So part of the whole fulfilled person is the will slice of taking responsibility for your problems in living, things you need to take care of. And a lot of times when you get into some addiction, it just mentally helps you escape the problem. So you never really take care of the problem.
How does one know that they truly have an addiction?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good question. So what do you think about that? I mean, exactly what are you saying?
I would imagine you check the box in your mind that I'm actually addicted to that. If it's getting in the way of your life, then that seems in my mind that
that's perfect. I mean, it is diagnosed, if you will, as having some, that what you're doing is interfering with your life functioning in some way, occupationally, interpersonally, physically. It's starting to cause impairment in your life. Mm-hmm.
And that could be even feedback from somebody else, but that's adding to the challenges in your life.
Exactly. Like, I mean, if your spouse is you're getting into domestic violence when you're drinking or even not drinking because you just have an attitude and you want to get to drinking and they're in the way of that, then that is feedback right there. If your spouse is saying that they want a divorce or you're drinking too much or that, this is affecting any area of your life, it's starting to impair your life, then you have to look at it and say, hey, then I probably have an addiction.
Wow.
And I need to look at the problem.
So important that we talked about this today. I think many people don't realize the severity. And I would have to say there's probably somebody in your life connected to somebody else, if it's not in the forefront, that has some type of addiction. So many people are escaping, especially after COVID, kind of just changed the dynamics. Best way for somebody to connect with you, Ann, through what's that website? Is it Psychology Today?
Yeah, that website is a good one. It's a directory for psychologists. So if you just go to Psychology Today, you can find me just under Ann Creekmore. And then you just click the link, click the link, and then it'll take me to the website, my personal website for my practice, and it'll have my phone number, email. It'll have my book that's in my maiden name and my pseudonym, if you will. And but I have other books as well, so you can just find everything I think right on there. And I'm here if anyone needs to hear from people. Yeah.
Absolutely, and not even just about addiction. Anything that somebody's dealing with. You are an amazing psychologist. Books are fantastic, and I'm not just saying that. They're so easy to read, just clear. Even the diagrams. Manual for Life. Love yourself, love your life, and it's under her pen name, A.P. Pelosa. Thank you so much, Ann, for being here today. Really appreciate it once again.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Be well.
Appreciate you.
Same. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.